For the dear Lamb of God, let us all bring our heart together. So I so thankful for me. I love the peace and shame. I thank you. So Hi. We have another song. Let's turn to the Solid Rock 272. 272. Two. We sing Jesus, love, consciousness, You wish I would just drop those chords a couple of notches, on those high notes. Wouldn't it be easier? Man, alive, wears me out up here. Y'all help me out. All right, let's sing the third and the fourth. Is all this love that thank you. Appreciate that. You can set those aside. It's a good principle. We understand the foundation, the principle of a foundation. Jesus Christ is the cornerstone. He is our foundation. What is the cornerstone? Anybody remember what a cornerstone is? He's described as a cornerstone. If you know, jump in there, huh?
First stone laid.
It is the first stone. It's the first stone laid. Because it's the first stone laid, and all other stones are laid directed by it, it has to be the most square. It has to be 100% 90 degrees. Okay, it has to be just right from corner to corner, and everything about that stone has to be the most perfect stone. so that when you put that at the corner of the building, then the stones that go this way to do that wall, and the ones that go this way to do that wall are perfect. And that's the point. Everything starts with Jesus. That foundation, that solid rock that doesn't change, it's unmovable forever. And man, is that important? I've had some folks come and talk to me about our church over the last 3 years. You know, they're like, well, I don't like this little thing, and I don't like this little thing, and I'm like, okay, I understand. And they really have an issue with it, and they want me to do something about it. I'm like, look, I was looking at the church's constitution. I even have some got to look at some older constitutions when the church was much younger, and I said, you know what? It's pretty much stayed the same all this time. I said, and that's why it's still where it's at. And that's why it's still going strong. I said, I've known some institutions, I've known some places that have changed from what they once stood upon as a foundation, and now they are completely different than what they were before. You take Hartford, for example. It used to be a college where Bible students could be trained and preachers could be trained. Now, can you imagine, man, the founders, if they knew what it was like right now, they'd roll over in their grave, right? I mean, so anyway, it's important that our foundations stay the same. I actually looked up some of their statements when they were first started, and man, it would sound like a church you'd attend. And then today, if you go back and read what they stand for now, it's just ridiculous how far they've strayed away from the truth. Anyway, strong foundation is important, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so let's go and do a couple of announcement things. I think I'm going to hold the prayer bulletin off to the last. And let's look at a couple of announcement things today. Last week we was talking about sanctity of life, and we are going to keep the bottles out there until the end of February. And if you fill one up, great, hang on to it till the end of February, and then we'll bring them all back one time, and that'll be a blessing to that Women's Comfort Care Ministry and helping them out. The teens will be attending the rally in the Valley Friday, January 26th, to hear Steve Pickett preach, putting over Proverbs 12. My kids have been memorizing verses this week. My son was kind of standing there just like that today. I'm like, you okay? I just walked in the room and he's just kind of standing there. What are you doing? He said, memorizing verses. Okay, brother, that's good. That's good. That's what I want to hear. But they've been trying to get ready for the Bible quizzing, and it helps them. And then, so they're going to lead the 5:15 ride the van. And then our couples conference with Kirk Copeland is less than a month away. And look, if you can't come to both days, come to something. Come to Friday, come to Saturday morning. That's fine. The sign up sheet is out there, and go ahead and sign up for that. You can't get, it won't hurt a thing to get more help with a marriage. Amen. I mean, pastor and his wife's marriage is supposed to be perfect, right? Yeah, it's supposed to be, but it ain't. I can tell you that. But you know what? I need all I can get of help and counsel and that sort of thing. Anytime I'm with another pastor and his wife who seems to like have it together, I say, all right, how do you do it? They're raising their kids, and I'm like, okay, tell them, invest in it because we need all we can get. And so get that, sign up for that if you will. I won't force you to come up here and play any embarrassing games. I might ask for volunteers, but I won't force nobody, okay? And so we will play a little bit and have fun. Saturday night, February the 3rd, we'll show the movie Sheffy in the Fellowship Hall here at 6 o'clock. And I was surprised at how many people came to me and said, I know what that movie is. I've seen that movie. And it was come out in like 1973 or something. It's an old movie. But it is about Robert Sheffy, a circuit riding preacher. And I think if you've never seen it, you'll be moved by it. How many of you have never seen that movie about Robert Sheffy? Okay. How about it? Well, I think you're in for a treat. Now, you can tell, by the way, that it was made in 1973, but it is black and white, okay? I know what I mean. It is color. It's not black and white. It is color. But I will say this. I'll give you the little disclaimer. There's some dramatic scenes in it, okay? There's no cussing or anything like that, but there's some dramatic scenes in it. If you've got little ones, we're going to have a separate thing for them in the teen room, okay? And so I haven't picked out what we're going to let them watch yet, but I think that would be wise if they're, I don't know. You make your best guess on that, but my teenagers will stay in here, but the little ones are going to be in there. Let's see here. Let's see the ladies. Yeah, after the movie night, ladies Bible Fellowship is February 3rd, 11th, 10th, and then 11th is Rochester family. They'll be coming and playing, and they have guitars and mandolins and a bass and all that stuff, and they come play kind of old-fashioned good music, okay, gospel music. He'll be preaching for us that morning, and then the 16th, 17th is the couples conference. 18th, Kurt Copeland, that does the couples conference, will be preaching Sunday morning. Around the Valley of Byron Fox, February 23rd. All right. Now, also, I felt like I was doing this Sunday, announcement after announcement. There are schedules out there in the foyer. And if you haven't gotten one, church schedule, and get one. It's all of 2024. I'm sure there'll be some things added here and there that not quite as big of a deal, but there are some big deals on that calendar. Let you know when VBS is, when Teen Camp is, Youth Camp, and that sort of thing. And I'm hoping to 2025 plan a winter retreat for some of the kids go to Cuba. And so we've been looking into that. I'd like to do it this year, but it's a little too short notice. So I won't do it yet this year. I hope to plan that in 2025. I've done that one time with teenagers. And it's funny because I had a youth pastor that had been a youth pastor for 13 years come and speak to my teenagers while we were at this retreat. And he said, and he only lived 3 hours from there, a ski resort that we were at. And he said, I have never taken my teenagers skiing. I said, why not? He said, are you kidding me? I said, I had another youth pastor tell me that he took his, and one guy, the helicopter had to take him to the hospital after he crashed. He said, I wouldn't dare go take my kids to this ski. And so I took my kids and everything went great. And but I guess some people just don't know how to stop or something. How many of you ever skied? Okay, all right. It's fun, ain't it? It's quite fun. I've skied twice. I went one time in college. I went one time on my honeymoon with my wife. Now, I am bow-legged and duck-footed, all right? And so, skis don't turn into good things, all right? You're supposed to learn first how to snowplow. Everybody familiar with that? All right, that's the first thing you learn. And I'm sorry, I couldn't do it. Even on the bunny hills, I was like, folks, I'm sorry, I'm going straight. There's nothing I can do about it. So I was like, I practiced on that thing for 30 minutes. I just got frustrated. I said, food on this. Ski lift. And I got up there, turned loose. And I said, I've seen people on TV do it. I'm going to do it. And I jumped and turned my skis, and I went one way. And I jumped and turned my skis, and I went the other way. Until I got tired of doing that, and then I went But I learned by the end of the day, I can manage that. I think I'd be a better snowboarder. But we went on our honeymoon, and went at night. And all they had open was a blue square, and it was about frozen. And so my wife had a great time watching me roll down the hill. I probably won't ski again. My knees, I don't think so. Let's turn to 2 Samuel, if you will. 2 Samuel. Yeah. Makes my knees hurt just thinking about it. So we've been going through talking about kings, and of course we dealt with King Saul. We're on King David now. We talked about a great start that King David had, the moral sin that he fell into with Bathsheba, and caused also a great moral failure of murdering basically Uriah, as well as other servants. We forget sometimes that there were other people died for the purpose of killing Uriah the Hittite. He ended up other servants got put in harm's way. They died wall too in war. And so David, thought he was okay for about a year. Thought everything was going to be blowing over. Bathsheba was with child. Uriah was dead. He took her as wife. And they thought, everything will be fine. And remember that we talked last week that the descendant, the really important descendant of Bathsheba is who? Okay, yes, that was the first. That was one of her children. All right, but way on down the road, who is a really important descendant of Jesus. Yes. Okay. And so you look at this story. Remember, I was like, I wanted to stretch your brains just a little bit. Think about this. So we looked at this story and was like, in God's sovereignty, how in the world? David and Bathsheba? Jesus? What about Uriah? How does all this play out? And how would it have played out without David's sin? Well, it's not impossible, of course, for us, humanly speaking, we know. We can't wrap our minds around the sovereignty of God, how much he knows. But one of the things I proposed was, hey, maybe Uriah was going to die anyway in the war. Maybe she would have became a widow. Maybe he would have took her as a wife. Well, that would have been much better, okay, than what he did. We don't know. We don't know. But at any rate, God is a great lemonade maker, is he not? I'm grateful for that. When somebody fails and somebody messes up, God is able to put things together and do something beautiful. And when we flop, and so I'm glad for that. He's the greatest lemonade maker there ever was. So she has, she does have Solomon. But because of his sin, there is what I'm going to call tonight the fallout. There is a result. There is a result with consequences and extents. But it's a fact. And we need to learn from it, and we need to do this. We need to pass this on down to our children. We need to teach our children about this because it's so important. Look at chapter 12, and we see that last week we talked about Amnon and how he raped his sister Tamar, and there's always this as sin and consequence. We see that David's sin was a moral sin, and Amnon raped Tamar, and so it seems as though those sins go together. And so it causes quite a bit of a moral failure in the family. And why is, something that really bothers me is as you read through these things that happened to David and his family, is you notice that David never addresses it. David never brings it up, goes to his kids, or at least we don't have a record of that. And because of it, that's what causes such an issue, I believe, with Absalom. David never addresses the sin he should have addressed from the get-go. It took Nathan to come to David, and then it took a huge mess with Absalom and him killing his brother before David would say anything about it. Matter of fact, Joab had to come to him and say, David, this ain't right. You got to fix this family situation. And so David kind of just didn't want to mess with the sin. So anyway, let's look at verse 9 real quick in chapter 12. And we're going to cover some ground tonight. Wherefore hast thou despised the command of the Lord, do evil in his sight. Thou hast killed Uriah the Hittite with the sword, and thou hast taken his wife to be thy wife, and hast slain him with the sword of the children of Ammon. Now therefore the sword shall never depart from thine house, because thou hast despised me, and hast taken the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be thy wife. Thus saith the Lord, behold, I will raise up evil against thee out of thine own house, and I will take thy wives before thine eyes, and give them unto thy neighbor, and he shall lie with thy wives in the sight of the sun, for thou didst it secretly, but I will do this thing before all Israel, before the sun. David said unto Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord. Well, praise the Lord, he called it what it was. He didn't make an excuse. He didn't blame it on anybody. Remember, Saul's first response when he was faced with his sin was he started making excuses. He was blaming it on other people. But David said, I have sinned. Because of that right heart that he had, God didn't remove David from his position. God continued to use David where he's at. But nevertheless, there was a fallout. And so David's sin was murder. And then likewise, his son Absalom kills his brother Amnon. And David doesn't address the issue with Absalom. He doesn't address the sin issue with Amnon, who raped Tamar. And he doesn't settle the issue with Absalom, who kills Amnon. And so the sword will not leave his house. Absalom ends up leaving after he kills his brother out of fear. He waits a year and ends up having his brother killed. But I want you to look at chapter 14 now. We're going to jump ahead a little bit. We talked about Tamar and Amnon and Absalom last week. I want to jump ahead to first, chapter 14. Notice verse 21. It says, and the king said unto Joab, behold now, I have done this thing. Go therefore, bring the young man Absalom again. I'll catch you up just for a second. Joab kind of sneakily goes around and gets somebody to come to David and have this hypothetical situation and express to David how he really needs to fix this family problem. Now Joab, if you can't fault him for one thing. Joab has been very loyal to David. He don't make the best decisions. He's one of David's right-hand men, but sometimes Joab makes some bad decisions. And he takes matters in his own hands when he shouldn't. But he has been loyal to David. And when he does present this issue, David does say to Joab, behold, I have done this thing. And go therefore, bring the young man Absalom again. And Joab fell to the ground on his face and bowed himself and thanked the king. And Joab said, today thy servant knoweth that I have found grace in thy sight, my lord, O king, and that the king has fulfilled the request of his servant. So Joab's the one that wanted him to come back. So Joab arose and went to Geshur and brought Absalom to Jerusalem. And the king said, let him turn to his own house and let him not see my face. So Absalom returned to his own house and saw not the king's face. Now, that's odd, isn't it? You would have thought David would have said, bring my son here. Let's talk about this. Let's get it out in the open. Let's deal with the sin. And let's fix things. But instead, he just says, just send him on to his house. I don't want to see him. And maybe he was disgusted at it for killing Amnon, which he should have been disgusted for raping Tamar, right? But, man, his mindset, something is not right. And he does not address it. And so, look at verse 25. But in all Israel there was none to be so much praised as Absalom for his beauty. From the sole of his foot even to the crown of his head, there was no blemish in him. So, Absalom doesn't have a relationship with his father because basically his father doesn't want to see him again. And everybody sees there's something special about Absalom. It says, and I'll go ahead and read this, but it says when he polled his head, for it was at every year's end that he polled it, because the hair was heavy on him, therefore he polled it. He weighed the hair of his head at 200 shekels after the king's weight. You know, there's a verse in Corinthians talking about it's a shame for a man to have long hair. Me and Brother Ryan, we don't have to worry about that, you know. But you know, it's and a woman's supposed to have a covering for her hair, right? And so they oftentimes we refer back to this situation with Absalom because we know the story. I don't mean to get ahead of you, but his hair gets him into a lot of trouble. But I got to thinking about his hair and studying about that thing. You know how much hair he had? It was a bunch of hair. Every year he polled it and he used to shave it. Every year he shaved it. And every year it grew back to 200 shekels, which is 5 pounds, or a little more than 5 pounds of hair. That's a bunch of hair. Mm-hmm. I don't know anybody that grows hair like that. And it's been pretty strong. Now, I have seen images, I don't know if you have too, but I've seen images, you know, the kid stories, you know, where he's hanging and dangling by the tree with his hair. That's a bad kid story, folks. Man alive, why are we teaching the kids? Anyway, but he's dangling there by his hair. I'm not sure if he actually hung by his hair, just his hair, or if his hair got tangled up and he couldn't get out, or what. I don't know how that happened. But either it was really, really strong and he was hanging just by his hair. And that may be the case because he had unusual hair, 5 pounds every year. And so, anyway, I thought that was an interesting little fact about Absalom. And it says here in verse 27 that he had good kids, or beautiful kids, and unto Absalom there were born 3 sons and 1 daughter, whose name was Tamar, and she was a woman of a fair countenance. So Absalom dwelt 2 full years in Jerusalem and saw not the king's face. You know, I think that Absalom probably wanted a relationship with his father, as I think any child naturally would. I think any father probably naturally wants a relationship with his child, in a natural sense anyway. There's some odd situations out there, but at any rate, David wouldn't see him. And so for 2 years, he went without seeing his father. Therefore Absalom sent for Joab to have sent him to the king, but he would not come to him. And when he sent again the second time, he would not come. Now we don't know why Joab wouldn't come to him. Why wouldn't Joab intercede for Absalom and David? We don't know. Maybe David said something. Maybe Joab had Joab's idea to bring Absalom there, right? So maybe Joab went to David and said, "Hey, your son, he's here in Jerusalem, and you guys need to patch this up, King. Maybe he was trying to talk to King David. Maybe David's like, I don't want to see him. Don't bring it up again, Joab. I don't know. We don't know what was going on. But nevertheless, he was trying to get Joab to intercede for him. Therefore he said unto his servant, See, Joab's field is near mine, and he hath barley there. Go and set it on fire. And Absalom's servant set the field on fire. He said, he won't pay any attention to me. He's going to pay attention to me now. Set his field on fire. Then Joab rose and came to Absalom into his house and said unto him, Wherefore hath thy servant set my field on fire? And Absalom answered Joab, Behold, I sent unto thee, saying, Come hither, that I may send thee to the king to say, Wherefore am I come to Geshur? It had been good for me to have been there still. Now therefore let me see the king's face, and if there be any iniquity in me, let him kill me. So Joab came to the king and told him. And when he had called for Absalom, he came to the king and bowed himself on his face to the ground before the king. And the king kissed Absalom. Now, it could be that Absalom all along had something up his sleeve. Maybe has been a trickster the whole time. Maybe he's a bloody man after all, because he killed his brother, right? There is some evidence to that. But if you put somebody off for 2 years who really does want a relationship with you, there can be some bitterness there. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine having your love denied for 2 years? There could be a lot of bitterness there. That could hurt. And I imagine, I don't know where the turn was in Absalom's heart. I don't know what happened exactly. But at any rate, in that 2-year time, or even before that, his heart turned against his father. And even though he goes now and bows before him, and King David seems to have forgiven Absalom. It says he kissed Absalom. At any rate, we're going to see a big change in his behavior right after that. So, he wants a relationship. He sets fire to Joab's field. People are drawn to his beauty. And when they are drawn to his beauty, he takes advantage of that in the next verse in chapter 15. It says, And it came to pass after this, that Absalom, being the king's son, he had some power, he had some pull. He prepared him chariots and horses, and 50 men to run before him. He made himself look like a man of power. He put around him lots of men. He put horses and chariots. And who else does that, by the way, and marches up and down in the kingdom? Who does that? A king does. That's right. That's what his dad would do. And that's what he did. To make himself appear like something. Look at verse 2. And Absalom rose up early and stood beside the way of the gate. And it was so that when any man that had a controversy to the king for judgment, then Absalom called unto him and said, Oh, what city art thou? And he'd say, Thy servant is one of the tribes of Israel. And Absalom said unto him, See, thy matters are good and right, but there is no man disputed of the king to hear thee. You wonder all along, what's David doing? Why is he not in his right spot? Why is he not judging for the people? And Absalom said, Moreover, oh, that I were made judge in the land, that every man which hath any suit or case or cause, might come unto me, and I would do him justice. And it was so, that when any man came nigh to him to do him obeisance, he put forth his hand and took him and kissed him. Boy, he began to talk. He began to talk to the people and move the people and said, You know what? He's not coming down here, and he don't care about your needs, but I care. I'm standing right here. I'll be a judge for you. Tell me what's your problem. Hey, I'll listen to you. I'll listen to you. You know what a wolf is in sheep's clothing? Somebody that'll listen to everybody else's problem and pull the people away. That's dangerous. That's dangerous ground. And so that's what he begins to do for the kingdom. And people are drawn to his good looks and to his charisma, his his power moves, if you will. You ever heard somebody making a power move? I'll tell you a funny story. I say it's funny. It's funny to me looking back on it. I was in ministry one time, not very long, but there was a person in leadership. Well, I'll just say it was a pastor there, and it was a Christian school, and the pastor just felt like he had to usurp his authority over everything. It drove me crazy. Eric couldn't do anything without his thumb on the altar. Well, anyway, when he would come to the school, because they were in different locations a little ways away, and he would come talk to the principal over the school, he would make the principal get up out of his chair, out behind his desk, and come sit in the other chair while he went and sat down in the principal's chair so that he could talk to him. When I heard about that, I just laughed out. I don't know. I feel like he was pretty insecure with his position of leadership. And anyway, it's a shame. Well, they would call it, ooh, look at the power move. I say, look at that foolishness. But anyway, it was a power move that Absalom would do these things that would lead these men with 50 men, or they would run before him and horses and chariots, and he would make himself big to the eyes of the people, and people are drawn to that and to his listening ear. And then Absalom rebels. And when he rebels, David flees. It says in verse 7, it came to pass after 40 years that Absalom said unto the king, I pray thee, let me go and pay my vow which I have vowed unto the Lord in Hebron. And for thy servant vowed a vow while I abode at Geshur in Syria, saying, if the Lord shall bring me again indeed to Jerusalem, then I will serve the Lord. And the king said unto him, go in peace. So he rose and went to Hebron, but it was all very deceptive. It said, but Absalom sent spies throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, as soon as ye hear the sound of the trumpet, then ye shall say, Absalom reigneth in Hebron. And when Absalom went 200 men out of Jerusalem, with Absalom went 200 men out of Jerusalem that were called, and they went in their simplicity, and they knew not anything. And Absalom sent for Ahithophel, the Gilonite, and David's counselor, from his city, even from Gilo, while he offered sacrifices, and the conspiracy was strong, for the people increased continually with Absalom. So, long story short here, David flees and gets out of there in order to protect him and some of his close men. There's a lot of deception and a lot of twists and turns in all this. Now, if I was just, again, teaching just David's life, we'd get into that, but I'm trying to go speed ahead a little bit so we can get to other kings. And so I want to jump to chapter 18. Okay, you can just jump to there, please. And we're going to jump right to the battle. It comes a time when David needs to fight. He divides his group into thirds. And I just really need to read it so we can catch all the context here. Chapter 18, verse 1, and David numbered the people that were with him, and set captains of thousands and captains of hundreds over them. And David sent forth a third part of the people under the hand of Joab, and a third part under the hand of Abishai, and the son of Zeruiah, Joab's brother, and the third part under the hand of Ittai, the Gittite. And the king said unto the people, I will surely go forth unto you, forth with you myself also. But the people answered, thou shalt not go forth, for if we flee away, they will not care for us. Neither if half of us die, will they care for us. Now thou art worth 10,000 of us. Therefore, now it's better that thou succor us out of the city. He had some loyal people. Praise the Lord. Amen. It's good that David had somebody that said, hey, we actually care about you, David. We want you alive, okay? We want you to stay alive. I'm glad for that. Verse 4, and the king said unto them, what seemeth you best, I will do. And the king stood by the gate side, and all the people came out by hundreds and by thousands. The king commanded Joab and Abishai and Ittai, saying, deal gently for my sake with the young man, even with Absalom. That's his child. He doesn't want to kill. And all the people heard when the king gave all the captains charge concerning Absalom. He made that clear. Verse 6. So the people went out into the field against Israel, and the battle was in the wood of Ephraim, where the people of Israel were slain before the servants of David. And there was a great slaughter that day of 20,000 men. Now this is interesting. Look at verse 8. For the battle was
there scattered over the face of all the country, and the wood devoured more people that day than the sword devoured. Their environment was so harsh, it was so rough. The wood devoured more people that day than the sword devoured. I'd like to look into more of that, but let's move on. Verse 9. And Absalom met the servants of David, and Absalom rode upon a mule. Remember, the mule is a king's animal. The mule is something that was, it was a smooth riding, and it was a very protecting animal. You know, a lot of people put mules in their pastures in order to protect the other livestock. If a coyote comes in there, a mule will chase them down. And they'll stomp on them, they'll do all kinds of stuff. A mule is a protective animal, and it's sure-footed like a donkey, but bigger than a donkey, so strong enough to hold man. And the horses are not as sure-footed as mules are. So anyway, lots of information, neat information about that. So he's riding on a mule, and went under the thick boughs of a great oak, and his head caught hold of the oak, and he was taken up by the heaven, and between the heaven and the earth, and the mule that was under him went away. And a certain man saw it, and told Joab, and said, Behold, I saw Absalom hanging in an oak. And Joab said unto the man that told him, Behold, thou sawest him. And why didst thou not smite him there to the ground? And I would have given thee 10 shekels of silver and a girdle. And the man said unto Joab, Though I should receive 1,000 shekels of silver in my hand, yet would I not put forth my hand against the king's son. Man, what character. Now, is Absalom the enemy? Yeah, certainly he is. Does the man deserve to die? Probably so, okay? But because he serves his King David, he said, I will not do that. There comes a time when it takes some character of a man to say, I will not do something like that against my king. So, for in our hearing the kings charged thee and Abishai and Ittai, saying, Beware that none touch the young man Absalom. Otherwise, I should have brought falsehood against mine own life. For there is no matter hid from the king. You know he'll find out. But thou thyself would have set thyself against me. Joab, you would have told him yourself that I killed him. Verse 14. Then said Joab, I may not tarry thus with thee. And he took 3 darts in his hand, thrust them through the heart of Absalom while he was yet alive in the midst of the oak. And then the 10 young men that bare Joab's armor compassed about and smote Absalom, slew him. Joab blew the trumpet. People returned from pursuing after Israel. But Joab held back the people. They took Absalom and cast him into a great pit of wood, and laid a very great heap of stones upon him. While Israel fled, everyone to his tent. Now Absalom in his lifetime had taken and reared up for himself a pillar, which is in the king's dale. For he said, I have no son to keep my name in remembrance, and he called the pillar after his own name. He is called this day Absalom's place. David is told about his death, and of course it grieves greatly. Joab, of course, his decisions, I think, have really messed up or has been skewed by David's example. We can look at Joab and say, man, Joab, you killed Absalom, and you made a decision to deceive David at one point in order to do the right thing, but it was the wrong way to do the right thing. So Joab, how did all this come about? Why don't you just do what you're supposed to do for the king? Be loyal to him and do everything he said. No, I think David actually set a bad example for Joab. You remember how it all started? David, in his sin with Bathsheba, wanted Uriah dead. And who was it that read the letter and put Uriah in danger? It was Joab. Right. He's seeing his own king do something, take matters in his own hands, and do something that was morally wrong, or a really bad stab at his character. And you wonder if that did not have a very bad effect on Joab in the future. Because he saw his own leadership, his own king, somebody that's his superior, who did not uphold the law. You know, with my kids with me, and I've got one now starting to drive,
Man, I forgot about that. You know, he's 15 now. He's got his permit, so we're driving around a little bit. That drives crazy, going. But I make him do everything right. And when I drive, you betcha they watch me. And I'm a little odd, and you can tell that. Everybody can say that. But anyway, I actually stop at stop sign. Okay, and it drives the people behind me crazy because I don't know. I don't think most people do. I think they go right on through, don't they? But anyway, and I stop at stop sign. But I thought about that. I want my kids to see me stopping at stop signs. You know, that's a little thing, right? I actually obey the speed limit. And I want my kids to see me obeying the speed limit because I want them to do the same thing. And I don't want them doing something dumb. Now, get me in a parking lot full of snow and ice, and I'll have some fun, all right? Get me with a four-wheeler where I can play a little bit. Yeah, we're going to have some fun, and I can do some dumb things, okay? But when it comes to law, I want my kids to know that I obey the law. And I want it to have a good effect on them. I don't want them to ever fear breaking the law because it's not an issue. You know, when I was at college at Bob Jones University, I thought I was going to prison, folks, when I first went. I'm telling you, I was from public school my whole life, and they gave me the rule book the first week I was there. I had to read that thing and sign an agreement and all this stuff. I read that book, and I mocked that thing. I thought it was the dumbest thing ever. They said that, you know what they said? They said that you couldn't hold hands with a girl. Yeah, that's what they said in college. You couldn't hold hands with a girl, and that you had to stay 6 inches away. 6 inches away from them at all times. I was like, well, how about that? I'll be shaking hands or giving no high fives, nothing like that. I said, well, at least it doesn't say I can't smooch a little bit. That's good. And my hall leader heard me say that, and he's like, what? I said, it doesn't say I couldn't smooch. Of course, if you have to be 6 inches away, well, that kind of eliminates that opportunity. But anyway, but I mocked that thing and joked about that thing. But you know what? I said, it's no big deal, though. I'm here because I want to be here because I want to grow my relationship with my Lord and get an education. And all these rules, yeah, everybody did it. They had a wall around that campus. They did. Some of it was like chain link fence. Some of it was a brick wall. You know, it was actually beautiful in most places. But they did. They had it. It wasn't to keep the kids out. I mean, keep the kids from getting out. I mean, that's what they said anyway. They said it was to keep other people from getting in. I understand that. But we always looked at it as though they're trying to keep us in. Well, that was a big wall. I mean, it covered like, I don't know, 170 acres? Big long thing. And if all you did all day long, okay, is walk around the border that this is your limitation. And if all you did was go, you know, and go up against that border all day long, eventually you're going to end up with a sore shoulder. You know what I'm saying? It's just like a dog on the end of a chain. Have you ever seen a dog wear out a trail at the end of his chain? Yeah, and you know, and whenever you go out there and feed them or pet them, they choke themselves to death almost just to get to you because they're on the end of that chain. You're like, dude, you got so much area to enjoy. Why don't you use it? You know? But no, they wear out a circle at their edge. They're always at the boundary and they're always at the edge. And if all we do is worry about what's on the edge and the boundaries, all we're going to do is get ourselves hurt instead of enjoying what we could enjoy within that freedoms that we do have. And so I think it's important to teach those things to our kids. I'm really careful about lying. I can't tell you how amazed I am at the people that lie. And I'm talking about Christians more than anything because they don't think of it as lying, but they do things that aren't right and say things that aren't right to their pastor, and they don't think a thing about it. And I'm sitting there going, oh no, we got to talk to them. And I don't want my kids to see me be deceptive and lie because I don't want them to be deceptive to me, and I don't want them to be deceptive to the Lord, but I'll be honest. And you know, that solves a lot of problems. You don't have to cover up a lot of mistakes and a lot of sin if you're just honest right up front, right? And so I hope I'm not stepping on any toes tonight. But I think he had a bad example in David. And maybe that's something that began
to have his bad choices and such. And so let's go to where he finds out. Look at verse 29 of chapter 18. King said, "Is the young man Absalom safe?" And Ahimaaz answered, "When Joab sent the king's servant, and me thy servant, I saw a great tumult, but I knew not what it was. And the king said unto him, Turn aside and stand here. And he turned aside and stood, and behold, Hushai came, and Hushai said, Tidings, my lord, the king, for the Lord hath avenged thee this day of all them that rose up against thee. You won, we won, king." They're trying their best to be positive. And the king said unto Hushai, "Is the young man Absalom safe?" Hushai answered, "The enemies of my lord the king, and all that rise against thee, how's it? All that rise against thee, to do thee hurt, be as that young man is." And the king was much moved, and went up to the chamber over the gate, and wept as he wept. Thus he said, "O my son Absalom, my son, my son Absalom, would God I had died for thee, O Absalom, my son, my son." And all the Israel wept right alongside him. When their king's hurt, he's hurt. Now, when their king's hurt, they're hurt. They burn because their king's mourning. You wonder, could it be prevented? You know, if David had been more involved in the whole situation with Amnon, Tamar, addressing the sin issue, if he had been more involved in Absalom and his murder of his brother, if he had somehow developed a relationship with his son again in those 2 years that he refused to see it, could all this have been prevented? And I'm telling you, Israel is a mess right now. The nation is a mess. They don't know who to, they don't know. They're like a termite and a yo-yo. I mean, they're just, the Absalom, do we follow Absalom or do we follow David? David don't seem to be doing the job, but Absalom's at the gate. He's helping people. Let's follow his advice because he's actually helping people. And then he leads them against the king. I thought the king's the one we're supposed to be loyal to. And then they are in a mess right now. And you wonder if it couldn't have been prevented. Later on, we're going to kind of spoil the story, but we're going to delve into it a little bit more. But later on, Joab does die. David makes sure at the end of his life that Benaiah, which is one of his right-hand men, mighty warrior of God, takes care of Joab for being such a bloody man. And so Joab does die. But next week we'll talk about the end of David's life, talk about him numbering the people, and we'll try to wrap it up next week. He'll be handing things over to Solomon. Yeah, I think we'll just stop right there. Man, what lessons. What a great sin it is for a man to try to take the favor away from another man that's God's put in that place. And I got to think about this. There's pastors who try to hurt other pastors, and they try to steal each other's members. Did you know that's a thing? I've heard of it, growing up and stuff. I never really witnessed it much, but I've heard of it. Yeah, it's a sheep stealer, a shepherd trying to steal somebody else's sheep. And that'd be an awful thing to do, wouldn't it? And if you're not careful, don't fall into this trap of talking about other churches. Don't compare your churches to other churches and your pastor to other pastors and things like that. Don't give in to murmuring and gossip and allow a division like happened with David and Absalom to happen. Don't let that ever happen. And if you feel like something's happening, hey, come let me know. I don't want to be a David and be blind to something. You know what I'm talking about? That'd be awful, wouldn't it? And I don't think that's happening, but I'm just saying, if they ever were to come up, hey, let's make sure we don't get into something like that. The devil would love to cause a divide between people that are supposed to love one another, right? And we don't need to give him space to even do such a thing. Well, anyway, let's talk about prayer requests for just a second. Is there any prayer requests? I want to go ahead and stop the live stream for just a second. Well, for the night.